But let's go to the Monday Night Football DFS slate. We got the Raiders going to Detroit to take on the Lions, coming off an embarrassing loss to the Baltimore Ravens. Lions favored by 8.5 to total 46.5. The Lions, the fifth luckiest team in the luck rankings. Vegas is middle of the pack. And the total slightly into the over, mainly because of Vegas. They're plus 4.6. Detroit minus 2.4, but it's still, you're showing some value over expected on the over. And that kind of makes sense because I do think that this is kind of a Lions bounce back spot. You're back at home, and that's when they play well. This Vegas defense hasn't been good. So even if you get O'Connell for the Raiders, I think we know the Lions are capable of scoring in the 30s to kind of get the total there. So, but who do you like in the captain spot?
I'm going with Jahmyr Gibbs here. He just has massive upside if David Montgomery does miss again. He's my RB2 right now, assuming Montgomery misses this week.
Me too, by the way.
Oh,
you
really?
asked me that earlier
nice.
in the week. You're like, where's Gibbs? You had him number 2. And yeah, after I, fiddled with some usage and locked him in. Yeah, he's definitely number 2. For me.
Yeah, he dominated usage last week. Just the problem was the Lions got blown out by the Ravens, so they had to abandon the run. They didn't have the ball as much, but Gibbs obviously flashed his pass catching upside. That's always going to be there. But if they have the ball more than they did last week and they play with the lead, he could rack up 15 plus carries as well. So he just has a ton of upside. It's an easy matchup against the Raiders. Like you said, I do think this is a bounce back spot for the Lions in general. So I'm going with Gibbs in the captain slot, assuming Dave Montgomery's out again. And even if Monty plays, I'll still like Gibbs here, maybe not in the captain slot, but at least, as a value play.
Yeah, I don't think Montgomery's playing. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
They were talking about a multi-week absence. I know he's still listed as questionable on the official injury report, but he was a DNP. So I'm pretty sure he's going to miss at least one more. It seems like the Lions haven't had a healthy backfield all year, right? Every time.
No kidding.
Yeah. Every time one guy comes back, another one leaves. So.
Yeah. And even like Gibbs and Reynolds were technically banged up last week, but yeah, it just hasn't been healthy yet.
And Muhammad Ibrahim got hurt too. So like they had 4 backs up and another one went down. So they just can't keep guys healthy in the backfield for some strange reason. I got to go with Sun God here in the captain spot. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 16 or more DraftKings points in every single game this year, 10 or more FanDuel points in 5 out of 6. So he's not only got the ceiling, but he's got the floor. He's had games of 33, 26, and 22 DraftKings points. And dating back to last season, he's had 15 or more DraftKings points in 11 of his last 15 games. That is amazing high floor, high ceiling consistency. And over his last 15 games dating back to last year, he's had 22 or more DraftKings points 40% of the time. That is, this guy is he is one of the best players in fantasy, point blank period. So love him in this spot, and particularly because of this matchup. So the Raiders are 21st in pass defense DVOA. We know they're not great. 30th over the middle of the field in DVOA, and 27th on short passes. And why is that? Because all the Raiders are doing is trying to prevent explosive plays. And you hear that from a lot of defenses, but the Raiders are actually doing a good job of it. They are allowing the third lowest rate of explosive passes, just under 9%. So that's great for a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, because that just means instead of, like, let's say Jameson Williams getting a 70-yard chunk, you have to drive down the field methodically, and those yards you can get 4 or 5 catches on a drive sometimes for ASB, and that's how you're going to really rack up these fantasy points. So I think this is the perfect matchup where it's a easy matchup, but the scheme is going to allow him, I think, to catch balls underneath. So love ASB in the captain spot.
34 targets in the last 2 games combined.
He's a new Keenan Allen, right? Like when Keenan retires,
Yeah.
this is going to be the guy we're talking about in 10 years. Just like, yeah, every single year, he's a lot.
Yeah.
Seven catches a game, just
Yep.
pencil him in for, 6 to 8 touchdowns,
Yeah.
1,300 yards.
Yep. He's Keenan Allen. I think my most receptions on the season prop with him is back in business.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, he missed that game, which was brutal.
Yeah.
But
Everyone
every receiver is gonna probably miss one game. But yeah, Puka Nacua is still leading the way of 58. But yeah, I got Sutton got it like 18-1 or something ridiculous. This is when Cooper Kupp's injury popped up and it looked like he might miss a few weeks, so I tried to get ahead of it. But yeah, if he keeps playing like this, could take down that market.
Love it. And you got half of that Niners last undefeated team, so you're racking up on these long shots.
We need Montgomery to return soon for your bet. I think he still has a chance for that, right?
I mean, kind of, but I mean, I don't know. He's starting to miss a few too many games. I think my livest one is Jordan Love to lead the league in picks. He's in third place, but Jimmy is in first, and Jimmy's probably not going to play enough games. And then you have Jalen Hurts, who's probably not going to continue throwing picks at that high rate. So Jordan Love he's definitely live.
I remember when he came to that conclusion, we were like talking it out. That was a great angle. He's definitely a live one there.
All right, who do you like for value in this Lions-Raiders game?
I'm going to go with Michael Mayer here because, he leapfrogged Austin Hooper, as the main pass-catching tight end a few weeks ago. Still not, seeing a ton of routes run. I think he peaked at like 62% a couple weeks ago. But he's there, and he's a talented rookie tight end that, is only going to get better. He was actually expected to be the first tight end drafted this year, mainly due to, being a good two-way player. He's an excellent blocker. Had a disappointing 2-catch, 16-yard game last week. But, that was with Brian Hoyer. So assuming, Jimmy G returns this week or they go back to Aiden O'Connell, I think that would help Mayer and the passing offense. I like investing in him. Again, he's only going to get better. And this should be, a trailing pass-heavy game script. So I think this is another game where Mayer could have, similar to what we saw, back in week 6, where I think he caught like 4 passes for over 50 yards or something. But, he's going to have more of those games going forward for sure.
Yeah, and we haven't heard anything about Renfro on the move yet, but we know they're looking to trade him. So that could even open up a couple of routes and snaps and targets for Mayer as well. Maybe they start going with more double tight end personnel as well. I'm going with Jacoby Myers here. He's a top 15 fantasy wide receiver this year, which is, props to him. Looked like, is he just a volume guy in the Patriots kind of default number one? But he's giving Devontae Adams a run for his money in terms of fantasy production. He leads the NFL in targets inside the 10-yard line, tied with Devontae Adams with 9, and then leads the league by himself in catches inside the 10 and yards inside the 10, and is tied with Travis Kelce for the most touchdowns. So he's the leader or tied in every category inside the 10. Now you just got to hope the Raiders can make it that far. But Detroit plays zone coverage at one of the highest rates in the league, and Myers 2 yards per route against zone, just 1.3 against man coverage. So this scheme is it suits him to get some production. And Detroit 8th in DVOA against number 1 wide receivers, but 27th against number 2 wide receivers. And I think that's because Cam Sutton, will follow the top receiver from time to time. Now they're still usually playing zone, but he'll at least line up on the same side as the top wide receiver at times when there is a spot like that. So you could see him, match up with Devontae here, and that would leave Myers to face either Jerry Jacobs, who's questionable with a knee, or Will Harris. And Sutton's the top 40 corner, but Jacobs is 67th in PFF, and Harris is 102nd. So I think Myers is going to get an easier matchup. I do think the Raiders will end up trailing at some point, potentially rather quickly in this game. Because again, when you see good teams off blowout losses, they tend to bounce back in a big way in the next game. So I do think the Raiders are going to have some trailing game script here. So like Myers, and then by that same token, I also like the Lions defense special teams here. Vegas allowing the 6th most fantasy points to opposing defense and special teams, and it doesn't really matter which quarterback you get. The Raiders have an NFL high 12 interceptions. I mentioned Jimmy G leads the league, and then Hoyer's throwing one every 26 attempts, and O'Connell's throwing one every 21 attempts. And if O'Connell is the starter, his pressure to sack rate is 54%. That is absurd. That means, more than half the time, he's just going down under pressure. So, we saw Khalil Mack go just bonkers in O'Connell's start. So I think this could be a big game for this Lions D. And I mentioned, good teams that get blown out tend to bounce back. Just to put some numbers to it. So when you have a team with a straight up winning percentage of 60% or more that got blown out by 20 or more points the prior week, the next week, regardless whether they're a favorite or an underdog, doesn't matter, 80, 39, and 1, 67% against the spread since 2003, according to our Action Labs data, covering by an average of 5.4 points per game. So this is a Lions smash spot. So I think the defense is definitely in consideration, because you could see a highly concentrated kind of touch share. You could like a lot of touches for St. Brown, Gibbs, Jacobs, and Adams, Myers, and not really much else going on for these teams. So I think looking at the defense for the Lions could be a way to kind of get some production on the cheap, because you're not going to be able to afford every one of these studs, obviously, in your lineup. So like the Lions D and like Jacoby.
Yeah, I watched that Aiden O'Connell start. He is definitely sackable. He would just stand there like a statue. It was horrible. Yeah, Jacoby Myers, didn't he set like the NFL record for most receptions without a touchdown or something to begin his career? He had like over 100. The last 16 games, he has 11 touchdowns. So just goes to show that positive touchdown regression is real.
Yeah, AKA, it's touchdowns aren't. It's just all about usage, right? It's he's getting targets. He's on the field almost every snap. So obviously he's starting to score touchdowns. Who do you like for dark throws?
I'm going to go Trey Tucker, and you kind of already alluded to this with Hunter Renfrow not only being phased out, but he might just be flat out traded away. Maybe before this game or before the deadline. But Trey Tucker's essentially become the new number 3 wide receiver. He's run a 55% routes run rate the past 2 games. He hasn't had a huge game yet, but he does have big playability. I mean, his ADOT's 18.4 yards down the field. He usually gets a design rush attempt a game. He has 2 rush attempts for over 15 yards this year. So another path for him to be, a good dart throw. And if Aiden O'Connell is playing, I would like Tucker. O'Connell's kind of like a YOLO guy. He's kind of like Jameis Winston. He will just chuck it down the field. Trey Tucker's who he had chemistry with in the preseason. So you talk about that all the time, where the backup quarterbacks have better chemistry with these kind of like ancillary receivers. So Trey Tucker is definitely a bet for like a long play, a long touchdown. He has 90 plus percentile speed. He's a speedster. So he definitely profiles as a deep threat. So going to go Trey Tucker here.
Yeah, and I like it because you get some leverage on, Devontae Adams, who, Devontae could always, he's probably going to get his 10 plus targets, but he could have one of those games like he did last week where it was like 7 catches for 57 or something like that. So if he doesn't put up, big efficiency numbers and Tucker catches a long ball, that takes even more, volume compiling chances away from Adams and even Myers as well. So I like Tucker. And I mean, I don't know. I feel like Josh McDaniels is just, so many decisions that you could just point to, like, why? I mean, I know Hunter Renfrow likes to freestyle on his routes, but he gets open. It's like, I feel like you got to adjust to your personnel. So it's weird that, he just has zero use for Hunter Renfrow, but he does like Tucker. And one of the best things I saw McDaniels do this year was, I think it was when Hoyer came in that game against the Patriots. it was like a third down and they doubled Adams, and he knew exactly what Belichick was going to do. And so he knew he was going to have single coverage everywhere else. So he sends Tucker like to kind of stress the defense right over the Adams route. And just, that's when they hit that long ball. So Tucker they definitely have some good play calls for him to get loose. So I do like him quite a bit. I'm going to go with some Craig Reynolds here. Again, think Montgomery is likely going to miss. Looks like Reynolds is good, should be good to go. The Raiders are bottom 5 in run defense. DVOA. Lions are 8-point favorite. Already mentioned the trend is in their favor coming off a big loss. And if you have a positive game script in this spot, that's where Reynolds could get some mop-up duty. 26 of his 31 touches this year have come in the second half, and over half of his touches this year have come in the fourth quarter. And he does have 3 carries and a touchdown inside the 10-yard line. So you're not afraid to use him in scoring position. And if this is a big bounce back spot, you could see him get, 6 to 10 touches. And I mean, the way these Lion running backs have been going down, dropping like flies, I think it's just good leverage on Jahmyr Gibbs, who will obviously carry a ton of ownership regardless. So like Craig Reynolds in the spot for a dart throw.
Yeah, he almost didn't even play last week, so that's why his usage might have been a little bit lower than I was expecting at least. But yeah, if they do have like a goal line carry, I think he'd be the favorite to get it. I think he would take over goal line duties. I think we can't get out of here without at least mentioning Jamison Williams as a potential dart throw. How could you not have some shares of Jamison Williams? 143 air yards last week, 0 actual receiving yards. I know that did no good for people in week 7. What the hell week is it? But it could mean that he is due for one of those patented 2 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown.
Yes, I mean, yeah, obviously we always want to attack these unrealized air yards, but
yeah,
I will say it's not exactly the defensive matchup, because again, the Raiders, the one thing they've done well this year is top 3 in limiting explosive pass plays. So it would be a contrarian play, and obviously Williams is talented, and I have liked what I've seen in terms of he's getting open. He's definitely you could see why they drafted him, but we know Jared Goff is usually not going to look deep first, or he's going to come off that read.
True.
And I mean, if you had Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta, you probably would do the same thing. Just look, intermediate, short, and just find those guys.
And Gibbs.
Yeah, right.
Too.
And Gibbs. So, but I mean, I just think they probably just want to get him going, keep his confidence up and use him to continue to scare defense. Because he already helps their offense even when he's not catching passes, because he just puts so much stress on their defense, and that is what opens things up for these guys underneath. So I think, Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, if he could even get more efficient, if that's even possible, I think that's going to happen. I think you're going to continue to see Jared Goff be ruthlessly efficient, especially in home games like this with Williams on the field. But, like we talked about before the season began, it's just, I don't think the production's going to be consistent, but this is, one game slate, perfect, kind of much better than redraft fantasy, right?
If you're playing him, you're going head to head in a 12-team, just typical fantasy league. That is not smart. But certainly a showdown slate. We can have some fun here and take some shares of Jamison Williams. That's all I'm getting at. I was trying to get like a positive take from you. I failed.
I mean, I like what he looks. I like how he looks on film. But this is kind of what I thought.
Did you see that comeback route a couple weeks ago?
Oh,
he stopped on the dime, and the cornerback just went skiing. He is going to have to get better. But yeah, there's the only time we can really play him are these showdown slates. That's all I'm getting at.
Who would you, if I gave you a prop, more yards straight up prime time, Quentin Johnson or Jamison Williams, who would you take?
That's a good one. I think Quentin Johnson has the higher floor, so I'd go with him.
Does he? I mean,
they're both look. They both have a low floor. I'm not saying that Quentin Johnson has a high floor in theory, but out of the two, I would go with Quentin Johnson.
I think I would still go JMO just because I get what you're saying. Johnson has the higher floor because he's running more routes, but I think Jameson Williams is getting open more per route, and thus, like, he's still getting open more. So, like, if Johnson runs 70% of the routes but gets open like 3 times, and Williams runs like 30% of the routes but gets open 7 times, I feel like that's still a higher floor for Williams. But I mean,
Quentin Johnson is getting open at times, and Herbert's just not looking his way, which is obviously an issue. There was that one, I think it was Sunday Night Football a couple weeks ago, where Quentin Johnson was like fairly open deep. Herbert was trying to throw it to him, and he got his arm hit, and the ball went 30 feet and fell incomplete. If Herbert completes that pass, maybe we're talking differently about Quentin Johnson right now. I said he's already a bust. Hype is like overblown for sure. Like he's going to take some time to adjust in the NFL. Unfortunately, Mike Williams getting hurt kind of forced him in there. So now he's getting scrutiny. But I think long term, I still believe in Quentin Johnson. Jameson Williams, though, he's also a project too. But that is a great prop. I would say that their props are probably similar.
Mm-hmm.
But as of now, I would slightly lean Johnson.
All right, we can get some side action on that. I'll go JMO. Somehow I'm on JMO. I don't even know how.
All right. Well, I mean, Palmer and Everett are banged up, so that could help Quentin Johnson.
True.
But yeah, maybe we can lock in this bet tonight. Let's do it.
And one more question I have before we get out of here. What do you think of Antoine Green? Because you do have no more Marvin Jones. We know JMO's not really a full-time guy. I think I saw Khalif Raymond on the injury report as well. So Green ran about 45% of the dropbacks. I know it was a blowout. So like how much are you projecting for him this week?
Yeah, that's a good. I want to hear your projection too. I have him at 30%. I still have Jamer on 50%, but with Marvin Jones out, that does clear up some routes, and I do have some of those going to Antoine Green, who's kind of like Jameson Williams, right? He's out there running wind sprints. He's not going to see many targets. He is mainly a deep threat. I was saying that when Jameson was out, Antoine Green's the most likely guy to kind of fill in that role. So with both guys there, I don't know how that works out. If anything, this just means more targets for Sun God and Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs, right?
Yeah, but I wouldn't mind taking a little sprinkle of Green with the 45% route rate last game.
Well, his rostership will be what, 1%?
A little higher than that. I'm sure somebody. So? I think I'm more like 5. I mean, it's a showdown, so you only got so many options, right?
That's true. I just think he's so under the radar, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, it should be higher. Yeah, Antoine Green is like excellent leverage against Jameson Williams, who obviously will be rostered at a higher clip.
Yep.
But yeah, I think Green is definitely sneaky here as well.
Yeah, right now I just have him for his season-long route rates. That's about 18% is what I have him. But I might bump him up a little more. Got to put it in, model for like when it's like a recent game versus whole season, and he'll probably bump up a little. But I noticed him, Raymond, and Williams kind of split snaps fairly evenly behind St. Brown and Reynolds, so that's definitely something to monitor going forward. All right, that is gonna do it for our Week 8 Night Shift episode. Be sure to check out the full list of luck rankings at actionnetwork.com for more great fantasy content from Sean and I. We have our full player projections episode that's out right now over on the Action Network podcast channel, and our fantasy preview episode is right here on the Fantasy Flex podcast channel, actionnetwork.com, for all of our NFL fantasy and betting content, fantasylabs.com for our DFS tools and models. Go join the Action Network Discord server for some extra fun. Link in the episode description. Find Sean on X at @the_oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon, and we're at those same handles on a free award-winning Action Network app. Until next time, let's get this shmoney.